Welcome to the purpose of this book. David G and David G is your hosts. We are in the family afterward. Page 125, first full paragraph. Hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas last week. Those of you who were celebrating, we did not study last week because of that, but we're here tonight on New Year's Day, which is kind of cool. David, did you want to recap anything or just dive in?
No, I think we're good to go. I think
Okay.
that, yeah, it's kind of a new little piece here.
Yep, let's do it. All right. So 125, guys, first paragraph. We families of Alcoholics Anonymous keep few skeletons in the closet. Everyone knows about the other's alcoholic troubles. This is a condition which, in ordinary life, would produce untold grief. There might be scandalous gossip, laughter at the expense of other people, and a tendency to take advantage of intimate information. Among us, these are rare occurrences. We do talk about each other a great deal, but we almost invariably temper such talk by a spirit of love and tolerance.
I just have temper, which is to balance or moderate.
Thank you, Abby. Yeah, not a lot to add to this paragraph. I guess just starting out, when we have skeletons in our closets, it's something bad or embarrassing that's happened in our past that we don't want to talk about. But if I'm sitting down with other people, another alcoholic, or if I'm an Al-Anon or whatever the case is, and I'm talking about it, what I'm going to learn here is I'm going to learn a little bit about my assets and my defects. And we're going to when I'm talking to someone else. The bottom of the paragraph, though, says, among us, there are rare occurrences. We do talk about each other a great deal. It's not saying it's okay to gossip about each other. That's not what it's saying. Gossip is very harmful, and I should not do it. David's very good about not gossiping. My sponsor is very good about not gossiping. Those are good demonstrations in my life, and not to do that kind of stuff. Um, but it says we do talk about each other a great deal, but we almost invariably temper such talk by a spirit of love and tolerance. So, we the first time we see love and tolerance in the big book is at the end of the 10-step disciplines on page 84 in the second paragraph. And it's what I'm trying to do there is I'm sharing my own story uh, because I know myself intimately. Why do I know myself intimately? Because I've done a fourth step. I know the truth because of the fourth column in my fourth step. I've shared this with someone in my fifth step. I've took those shortcomings to God. I became willing to let those things go and let my creator take them from me because I don't know the difference between my assets and my difficulties and my defects. So he removes the ones that he sees fit. And and then at the same time, I'm not sharing things about other people publicly. Like a lot of in the next paragraph, I think they get into that a little bit more about that. But like if someone shares something with me, a sponsee, you can bet your butt. And I usually say this because it's very true of me. And I got a couple of sponsees on this call tonight. If you share something with me, most likely by the time I walk out of the room, I've already forgotten what you shared with me. I'm getting
Totally.
up there in age, right? It just kind of just happens to me. It's important to me. I'm not minimizing the importance of the share. I am not saying that. I'm just saying that I'm not going to go out and spread. I'm not coming to come home and tell my wife about what happened between a conversation with me and someone else. That's just not what I do. And I think anonymity plays a huge part in that. What I hear here, when I see here, I let it stay here. That's what I do. Maybe sometimes I don't have an answer for something, and I will go to my sponsor and I would get permission of one of my sponsees to say, "Hey, I'm going to go to them with this question you proposed to me. I don't have the answer for. Is it okay if I use your name, or can you be part of a call?" So, other than that, that's about all I got in that.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I'm not sure I have a ton more to add to that. Also, one of the other reasons I can't remember anything my sponsees tell me in like their fifth step is, listen, I got a brain full of thinking about myself. I'm still not rid of the plague of self, so I only have so much room for you guys in it, right? I was just thinking it's true. Everyone knows about the other's alcoholic troubles. It's an interesting statement, and I think it's a true statement. We ought to know pretty liberally about each other's alcoholic troubles because what are we supposed to be talking about in formal meetings? The problem of alcoholism, the obsession, the allergy, and our spiritual issue, and then the solution from that. So we ought to hear some war stories from time to time. A little is okay. And some of those crazy stories, we're newcomers, we come in, we got to get all that stuff out. Lay it on us. I ought to know pretty well the people I run with what all their alcoholic troubles and problems are. Do I need to know the entirety of everything else going on in their life? No, not really. We're peers in AA. People that I'm close to, people out here like David and like Abby that, we spend a lot of time together. Yeah, I know more about them. Those are the relationships that we fostered. That's supplemental, you know, but we're not, this is not full on group therapy, mutual aid. That's not the point of 12-step recovery, right? As a reminder, the whole point of 12-step recovery is to have a spiritual awakening, to get to a God as I understand him, so he can fix me up, right? Paraphrasing, of course.
And let me add something to that because I was going to do that and I forgot. And David reminded me here on page 90 in working with others, it gives us directions on what we should when we discover a prospect. It's right at the top of the page. It says, when you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. And that's what I need to do. But first thing I got to do is I got to qualify him because I'm not going to waste my time. When you start to drink, drug, eat, obsess over gambling, whatever your drug of no choice is, can you control the amount you drink? And I'm just going to use the word drink there. Or when you stop, can you stay stopped? Those answers are no or no. Then I proceed, and I sit down and find out all I can about him. I just started working with a guy who's sober 5 years, has never been through the book, and he asked me to take him through. And I, yes, I will. I'd be happy to do that. If you're willing to do it, I'm willing to do it with you, shoulder to shoulder. But the first thing I did was find out if he's a real alcoholic or not, and what his drug of no choice is, because I need to know that. Then I asked him, I want to hear about it. I want to know, are you married? Do you have kids? Where do you work at? Where your financial, I don't ask him for his checkbook. I'm not saying that. I was just like, but I do want to get to know him on a personal level. And I want to know his last name. We joke around about this anonymity thing a lot of times, that we're not supposed to be anonymous in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. We need to get to know each other's last name here. Because the funniest story I ever heard, and I don't think I'll do it justice by telling this story, but the fact is that if you end up in the hospital and you're after a surgery and you're recovering, and the nurse comes to you and go, you must be famous. There's 50 people downstairs asking for David G. I know that must not be your name. That must be a cover-up name because you must be hiding from someone because you must be that popular. But they don't know your last name. It's like, we need to know our last names. It's very important that we know that stuff. But I always just thought that was kind of humorous. But the thing is I got to know the person I get to work with. It's just kind of part of the shoulder to shoulder appearances that I want to have all the time with the people I work with, because I'm watching them have a spiritual experience right in front of my very eyes, like watching God do his miracle and in this book, because there's no failure when you do this work out of this book. There's just not. If you do 4 through 9 and get recovered and you stay in 10, 11, and 12, you never have to take a drink again. That sounds so simple. It is. This is a program of action. If it was a program of just saying, God keeps me sober, it'd be one page and we shut the book and we say, have a nice day. That's not it. God does not keep me sober. I am responsible for the work here, and I have a relationship with God that can solve all my problems. But I am responsible for doing this work, and gladly do this work, and meaning all this work all the time.
Okay, let's move on. Paragraph 2. Another principle we observe carefully is that we do not relate intimate experiences of another person unless we are sure he would approve. We find it better when possible to stick to our own stories. A man may criticize or laugh at himself, and it will affect others favorably. But criticism or ridicule coming from another often produces the contrary effect. Members of a family should watch such matters carefully, for one careless, inconsiderate remark has been known to raise the very devil. We alcoholics are sensitive people. It takes some of us a long time to outgrow that serious handicap.
I have handicap, which is any disadvantage which makes success more difficult.
And I just talked about this a little briefly, and I set this paragraph up by saying that is like I don't get to relate intimate experiences of another person unless I'm sure we have to prove that his approval or her approval, whoever I'm working with. And I share this one. It just happened just recently with a guy I've been working with for a number of years, and He's been recovered for a number of years, sponsors a lot of guys, does a big book study of his own, and he's very versed in the book and is a wonderful guy. And I watched the miracle of what happens in Alcoholics Anonymous when you do this work. And the one thing that he wasn't doing very well with is his ninth step. And he had needed some amends to make to his sons, who had not had any contact with him for the 5 years of his sobriety and 2 years prior to his sobriety. He had nothing. They would not take a text, a phone call, or anything from them. And I suggested to him to write his oldest son a kindly letter. His oldest son was an adult, has his own family, has his own career. And I said, I think it'd be great if you just wrote him a kindly letter, gave the letter to your sister who lives right by your son, and I think that might suffice. Maybe it will open up the door. And he kind of just hawed around about it, didn't do anything. And I brought it up to him a couple of weeks later. I said, "Where you at with that letter?" And he's like, "Yeah, I just haven't got around to it. I've been too busy." I'm like, "Dude, if you want any results, you got to take actions here." And so he was walking up the door after work one night, and he was going to go work out at the gym. And I have his permission to share this story. He was going to walk out the door and go to the gym that night, and something nudged him. And he came back into the room, and he said he heard me in his head. He goes, write your son a kindly letter. And he sat down at his desk, got out a piece of paper and pencil, started to write his son's name, which is Junior. His name is Senior. He's Junior. Didn't even get the first letter out, and his son texted him out of the blue. Out of the blue. That is the crack of the willingness of crack. That is the door of willingness cracked open. When he cracks open the door of willingness, God shows up. And what a great experience for him to have, and for me to share that with you people, because when I do this work, miraculous things happen. And that happened to him. And it started lines of communication with his son was 7 years of absence between him and his son. Could he have pulled that off on his own power? It's been proven over the last 7 years he could not have. But when he took the action of just to sit down with paper and pen, something changed right away. His son texted him. He didn't have to text his son. He texted him because he became willing to do this work. So that's the story that I'm allowed to share, because he gave me permission, and I asked for permission because I love wonderful stories, and we see them all the time when you get recovered. I've seen them hundreds of times with people I've worked with. Down at the bottom of the page where it talks about a man may criticize or laugh at himself and will affect others favorably, but criticism or ridicule coming from another often produces the contrary effect, which is usually a resentment, anger or resentment. And then as we go through the rest of that page, it says members of a family should watch such matters carefully, for one careless, inconsiderate remark has been known to raise the very devil. We are very sensitive people. You hurt my feelings. If you say or look at me the wrong way, I may cry. It just may happen. And then it says, we alcoholics are sensitive people. It even tells me that. And then the last thing is it takes some of us a long time to outgrow the spiritual handicap. This is a spiritual handicap. My experience, though, is if I get into 10, if I do those disciplines, and the acronym in the disciplines that I'm talking about are watch, ask, discuss, amend, and turn. The what at, that's the acronym. And on page 84 of the disciplines, I start outgrowing this spiritual handicap that I have, because I can become emotionally sober. And then I'm not so sensitive. And Bert and I and Rob were all talking about, like, sobriety. The way I measure my sobriety is when I learned how to laugh at myself. That's when I knew I was sober finally.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about that really quickly too. So laughing at ourselves, says a man may criticize or laugh at himself and it will affect others favorably. This is self-deprecating humor. And I think it's powerful, and I think it's a sign of some emotional maturity when we're able to do this. I think people find it relatable, which is the point that Bill's making. But also self-deprecating humor, it can go too far, too much of it, right? And then it turns into more just self, right? Because then it can become attention seeking. So like most things, a little goes a long way. And then I just wanted to share, David emphasized that last sentence in the paragraph. It takes some of us a long time to outgrow that serious handicap. What handicap? That we alcoholics are sensitive people. So I want to do a cross literature reference here. In the 12 and 12, in step 12, towards the end of it, very bottom of page 122, there's a little something about sensitive alcoholics in here that if you're not familiar with this, I think you'll appreciate. I'm just going to read it to you. When AA was quite young, a number of eminent psychologists and doctors made an exhaustive study of a good-sized group of so-called problem drinkers. The doctors weren't trying to find how different we were from one another. They sought to find whatever personality traits, if any, this group of alcoholics had in common. They finally came up with a conclusion that shocked the AA members of that time. Are you ready for this shocking revelation these psychiatrists and doctors had about us as members of AA? These distinguished men had the nerve to say that most of the alcoholics under investigation were still childish, emotionally sensitive, and grandiose, right? Does anybody relate? Certainly pre-recovery, but even at times in recovery or being recovered, behaving childishly, emotionally sensitive, or grandiose. I mean, maybe I'm the only guy, right? But I feel like that's a fairly strong description of me. So this is parallels what Bill was talking about back here in 25. We're very sensitive people, right? We can have very thin skin that takes a long time to thicken and toughen. They figured it out back here in the early or the mid 1930s, and it hasn't changed yet now that we're in the year 2025. Paragraph 3 on 125 back in the big book. Many alcoholics are enthusiasts. They run to extremes. At the beginning of recovery, a man will take, as a rule, one of two directions. He may either plunge into a frantic attempt to get on his feet in business, or he may be so enthralled by his new life that he talks or thinks of little else. In either case, certain family problems will arise. With these, we have had experience galore. Nothing, Ab? Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add to that is the very last sentence in there, last two sentences. In either case, because they're talking about people in early recovery here, and I did not run out and do this. I was just happy to have a job at the time that I did not lose. It says, but this is about being an extremist. But if I'm a recovered alcoholic, I'm going to take you to a page and try to connect the dot here. In the bottom of that paragraph on page 126, it says, either case, certain family problems will arise. And it says, with these, we've had experience galore. So with this, what I need to have done for me here is to have a personal relationship with my creator. If we go back to page 85, into action, and we go to the second full paragraph, which is right before the 11th step. So it's the very last part of the 10th step in here. It says, last paragraph there. Much has already been said about receiving strength and inspiration and direction from him who has all knowledge and power. If we are carefully follow direction, we've begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. To some extent, we become God conscious. We have begun to develop a vital sixth sense, a spiritual sense. But we must go further, and that means more action. So that means I will have the right thought. I can have the right action if I go to prayer. I can go to counsel, go to my running buddies, go to my sponsor, get some counsel, but I got to have some balance. And in early sobriety, I don't know how to do that necessarily. I become an enthusiast and I want to run and change everything from my past. And I don't even know how to do that. So that's why a sponsor really comes in handy right there for me, a big book sponsor. And then the result of the steps here is when I'm in the 10th step that I grow that God consciousness, I have that vital sixth sense. Now I know how to balance things out a little bit better. I know, first of all, that I go to prayer first. And today it's about, I have my own business. I do a lot in AA and CA. David and I do a lot of stuff. We hold a lot of positions. We sponsor a lot of people. And I'm married and I have kids and grandkids and I have a relationship with all those things and I have other responsibilities. It's all balanced out. I'm not sleep deprived necessarily. My wife is not begging for my attention. My kids are not begging for their attention. They're all grown up and stuff. And my grandkids, I participate in their lives. It takes time though. All those things are new behaviors, new learning skills that I never had before. but because of a relationship with power and the demonstration of people before me and after me in Alcoholics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous, I've learned how to do that well, to some extent, anyways. I shouldn't say well, but to some extent where I don't have complaints. But the one thing I do, and the last thing I'll say about that is, I do check in. I do check in with my wife. I do check in with my daughters. If there's a family event or a grandson or a granddaughter event, I make sure that I'm a part of it. Like I didn't double book myself on something here. So that's all I got there.
So many alcoholics are enthusiasts. They run to extremes. Yeah, I mean that is alcoholism. That is addiction, in my experience, and the experience of just about everybody I've ever met. Right, and it reminds me when I went to my parents and told them that I had gotten into recovery, as I did a very good job of hiding my addiction from them. They were surprised when I went and told them that I was now in 12-step recovery. And my mom said to me towards the end of the conversation, well, honey, I understand that you have a problem. Do you really think you're an addict? And I paused for a second and I said to her, Mom, what have you ever known me to do in moderation? And she just looked at me and she had no answer, because the only answer is nothing. I had no sense of moderation. I had no sense of balance. Everything was on or off, right? If it was time to work out, get in shape, I ran and I lifted and I ate right, and then when the season was over, I was slothful, right? It was all on, all off, all the time. That's one of our most defining characteristics. And that's why this next thing makes a lot of sense, because it says at the beginning of recovery, man will, as a rule, take one of two directions: dive into business, right? Trying to get our financial situation straightened back out, or, pursue recovery like crazy. I'm not sure it's as either or in my experience, but I get the idea that I don't usually see people kind of meandering, you know? And then in either case, certain family problems will arise. With these, we've had experience galore, and that's really going to set up this next paragraph, which I'll just take us into. So now, top of 126. We think it dangerous if he, so again, we're talking about the alcoholic here, the addict. We think it dangerous if he rushes headlong at his economic problem. The family will be affected also, pleasantly at first, as they feel their money troubles are about to be solved. Then not so pleasantly as they find themselves neglected. Dad may be tired at night and preoccupied by day. He may take small interest in the children and may show irritation when reproved for his delinquencies. If not irritable, he may seem dull and boring, not gay and affectionate as the family would like him to be. Mother may complain of inattention. They are all disappointed and often let him feel it. Beginning with such complaints, a barrier arises. He is straining every nerve to make up for lost time. He is striving to recover fortune and reputation and feels he is doing very well.
I have a couple guys approved of ones are in so much payment to, and gay meaning cheerful and lively.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say what I have written on next to this page is a great big warning with an exclamation point. That's what I got. I mean, I don't even know what else to add to that, other than how am I doing on my own power with this, right? On my own power, how am I doing? This is about me incorporating power the same way as how am I doing it with the bedevilments on my own power on page 52. How am I doing on page 27 in the fourth paragraph when Carl Jung is talking in Roland Hazard and I have to have this vital spiritual experience? Can I perform my own vital spiritual experience? I can't. When we talk about my ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which once were the guiding force of my life, when they get suddenly cast to one side, did I do that? I did not do that. This must happen for me, but I can't do it on my own power. So the same thing holds true here. Counsel, demonstration, and working these steps in my life, and in praying and meditation. Those are the key vital part of the toolkit that's laid at my feet that I need to pick up so that I can have that balance. And I get it early in sobriety, trying to make up for all that lost time. I don't know how to do that. In one experience I'll share with you, I'm a father of 5 daughters when I got sober, and they ranged from 1 to I can't remember, like 15 or something at the time. And that was overwhelming for me to find out that honestly, God, I swear to God, I woke up to that one day and went, holy cow, how am I going to do this? And I just happened to have a very good friend that had 3 daughters, and he used to invite me over his house all the time. And I just watched in amazement how he interacted with his children. And I'm a good mimic, dude. I'm a great mimic. Like if your favorite color is green, guess what? So's mine. It's like I can do that whole thing. And I stole from him, just like I've stole from you in meetings. I stole from this big book and the 12 and 12 and any AA approved literature. And I try to apply it in my life. And I was able to make that change with the power of God in my life. And now I have a wonderful relationship with my wife and kids. They come over all the time. They're part of our lives. And the most of the credit goes to my wife, not to me, but I got to be a part of the change.
Yeah, this paragraph is again, they're just talking about their experience, what they had seen, and it's, as David pointed out, it's just a whole bunch of warnings about what's going to happen if someone newly recovered decides to focus their attention on work, right, instead of recovery. So moving on. Second full paragraph on 126. Sometimes mother and children don't think so. Having been neglected and misused in the past, they think father owes them more than they are getting. They want him to make a fuss over them. They expect him to give them the nice times they used to have before he drank so much, and to show his contrition for what they suffered. But dad doesn't give freely of himself. Resentment grows. He becomes still less communicative. Sometimes he explodes over a trifle. The family is mystified. They criticize, pointing out how he is falling down on his spiritual program. Well, that's super helpful.
I have contrition and trifle. Contrition is remorse, expressed regret for wrongdoing, and trifle is a small or minor thing, something of little importance.
Thanks, Ab. I mean, let me hop in here, David. What do you guys see here? Look at what's being described. So, having been neglected, misused in the past. So, I'm upset about some history. They think father owes them more than they're getting. So, because of how you treated me, now I expect that you're gonna, do this. I want you to make a fuss over me. They expect, it says literally expect here, nice times you used to have before you drank so much. I expect you to show contrition, for how I've suffered, right? What are all expect? What's going to happen to my spiritually ill family? We've been talking about this for 2 chapters. They're going to get filled with resentments as well, right? We're all spiritually sick in the family. They have all these expectations. And I can only be concerned with myself. I cannot take on this position that my spiritually sick family can't have expectations and resentments. That's on them. That's their own stuff to figure out. I need to be concerned with my own expectations and my own resentments. What Bill is laying out here is a warning saying this is likely to happen in our families, right? And then this last thing, the family criticized, pointing out how he's falling down in his spiritual program. That's probably the last thing any recovering person needs at any time. But again, people are free to say whatever the hell they like. I say this regularly. If you would like a spiritual watchdog or timekeeper, marry someone else in recovery. My wife, God bless her, has been sober for 18 years. And has to endure and listen to all my stuff. And every once in a while, I get the, okay, Captain AA, just take it down a notch, would you? And she's usually right when she says that.
That's so great. Yeah. Here's my problem. And I find this astonishing that I found this out probably like 5 or 6 years ago. And I've read and studied this book since I was like 2 years sober. And I've done big book studies since I've been 2 years sober, but I didn't really put this together. On page 62, Bill tells us what our real problem is. And that's what I found astonishing. I knew that I had a drink problem and I knew my life was unmanageable. But on page 62 in the first paragraph, this is what my real problem is. And this is astonishing. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. My wife, my kids. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation. You're falling down in your spiritual program. That hurts my feelings. And then it says, so our troubles we think are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcohol is an extreme example of self-will run riot. Though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, please pay attention to this. We alcoholics must be rid of selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. And then it says, and there are often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. That is the key. That is it. I gotta have God. I desperately need God to remove this selfishness from me. So, and I know they're talking about some early in sobriety. And the last thing is a little humor. I'm going to put it in this thing. Great definitions, exact same definitions as I have that Abby gave us, except for I have an added definition of trifle. So she gave the definition of trifle as a thing of little value over importance. But if you're British, it has a different meaning. And if I'm wrong, please correct me, but I believe this is right. A trifle, if you're British, is a cold dessert of sponge cake and fruit covered with layers of custard, jelly, and cream. Two definitions, same word. I just thought this humorous.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Charlotte or somebody correct David if it's not true.
Please don't correct me. I'm very sensitive.
We covered that, right?
Yeah.
Bottom of 126. This sort of thing can be avoided. Both father and the family are mistaken, though each side may have some justification. Careful with the J word. It is of little use to argue and only makes the impasse worse. The family must realize that Dad, though marvelously improved, is still convalescing. They should be thankful that he is sober and able to be of this world once more. Let them praise his progress. Let them remember that his drinking wrought all kinds of damage that may take long to repair. If they sense these things, they will not take so seriously his periods of crankiness, depression, or apathy, which will disappear when there is tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding.
I have convalescing, which is recovering or healing. I missed some definitions in this one, so I'm going to look up apathy and impasse and get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Go
Thanks,
ahead.
Abby.
David.
Yeah, not a lot I'm going to argue. Not a lot I'm going to discuss on this, but the last part of the last little sentence on page 126, third paragraph that David said, and yeah, be careful of the word justification, at least for the alcoholic and addict.
Yeah.
Right after that, it says, it is of little use to argue, only makes the impasse worse. Do I want to be right with God? Then I need not to be arguing. I can have a disagreement. I can't be fault finding. I don't need to argue. You know, my wife and I don't argue. We have disagreements, and we usually just cut them short before they turn into an argument. What's there to argue about? You know, I'm way over my skis that I have a woman like that in my life to start with. But it says, so the spiritual principle of success in that paragraph is right after convalescing. It says they should be thankful. That is a principle of success that I should have. I should be grateful, because just because I put the plug in the jug, you know, that is actually where I'm at in early recovery. You know, and because of I am a recovered alcoholic, I can actually put the plug in the jug right now and leave it there. But not when I was first sober. So that statement, I hated it when I hear it. But at the same time, is I can't put the plug in the jug today, although I have to do this work and I get to do this work, and I'll have to pull it out. But the thing about it is I am thankful I am sober. Now I'm changing the words in here. And then I'm not going to praise my own progress, because I'm usually the last one to see the change in me. You know, and I don't have a sponsor who praises me. He's just not that way. I do praise my sponsees. I have a few of them that I work with, that all of them that I work with, because they're all recovered, and I would let any one of them sponsor me. there's no doubt about it, because they live the spiritual principles in their life. So they're great demonstrations because they do the work out of this book. But the last part of that paragraph, it says that they sense these things, they will not take so seriously his periods of crankiness, depression, and apathy.
Ah,
I can't stop laughing. It's just like, why should they accept my irritable, restless, and discontent? Why should
totally.
they have to accept that? They should not have to. I'm supposed to be changing. And this change is taking place has nothing to do with externally. This change that I'm supposed to be having is internal change because this disease is internal and the solution is internal.
So remember, this book, guys, is obviously for the sort of sick identified patient, the alcoholic, the addict, right? The obsessive overeater, the whatever our problem related to our fellowship is. But it's also an instruction manual, a textbook for our families if they want to understand about us, right? We don't force this on them. So one of the things that the book can do is suggest these ideas to the family so that we don't have to. So look at, starting in the top of 27, so the family must realize that dad is still convalescing. They should be thankful he's sober and able to be of this world once more. Let them praise his progress. That is for the book to suggest to the family. That is not for us when we are upset to say, you should be thankful I'm sober and of this world again. Why don't you praise my progress? How will that go over, guys? Like a lead balloon, right? This is why it's great if the family's interested and willing to read this book, because they're not going to hear it from us. They're tired of listening to us, right? But they might hear it from the experts who wrote this thing. And then, yeah, I laughed as I read that, and David's got it right. So this is one of these tall orders that Bill writes about. He said, hey, family, after all the stuff you've been through and you're still really unhappy, don't let my crankiness, depression, or apathy bother you. It's a pretty tall order. And this is a promise, right? It says, which will disappear when there's tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding. Maybe, but I would actually suggest that the crankiness, the depression, and apathy is going to disappear once I get to God and I have a real relationship with God. And coming out of that, my family will find it much easier to be tolerant, loving, and spiritually understanding of me. Right? It's a little circular. I'm like, well, what's gonna come first? And I'll just tell you, what's gonna come first is me getting into action, doing the mechanics, which are going to end up in a miraculous spiritual event in my life. And then I'm going to just be a better man. And then my family will be a lot more interested in who I am and spending time with me. Continuing on 127. The head of the house ought to remember that he is mainly to blame for what befell his home. He can scarcely square the account in his lifetime, but he must, there's the M word, see the danger of over concentration on financial success. Although financial recovery is on the way for many of us, we found we could not place money first. For us, material well being always followed spiritual progress, it never preceded.
I have a couple. In this paragraph, I have befell, which is happened to. And in the previous paragraph, I did look up impasse and apathy. Impasse is a difficult situation or dilemma, and apathy is indifference, lack of interest, or concern.
Thank you, Abby. So there's a warning in the middle of that page. It says but he must see the danger of over concentration on financial success. So Bill's giving us a warning. And then, although it says, although financial recovery is on the way for many of us, that's been my truth. We found we could not place money first. For us, material well-being always follows spiritual progress and never preceded it. Well, 2 other times in the book, Bill mentions other things that have to come in a certain order. And on page 64, in the 3rd paragraph, he's talking about the spiritual malady. What happens when we overcome that? When we overcome the spiritual malady, that's when we straighten out mentally and physically. That's on page 64 in the 3rd paragraph. And then the order of importance here, also on page 98 in the 1st paragraph, it says he clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. The word after that is nonsense. That is nonsense. I have to get sober first. And in my experiences, God is not going to give me, first of all, he's not going to put anybody in my life unless I'm spiritually fit that I can help them. I don't believe that to be any different than my experience. And also at the same time is like my spirit, nights that promises come true for me. I don't focus on the things that I can't control. What I can't control is I can go to work every day, do my job to the best ability that I have, and then pray and meditate about the direction that God wants to take me in, because I believe we live, excuse me, we live two lives in one. The life I lived before I got sober and the life that I live now as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, practicing the 12 steps, the 12 traditions, the 12 concepts in my daily life and inviting God in all day long. And my life looks 180 degrees different than it did even 5 years ago, even a year ago. Like it's about the effectiveness and understanding of God's will is in my life today. And the finances and the relationship and all the other things in my life are not mine anyways. He entrusted me with those things to do better with them. And I always wanted to do better, but I just never could do better. But with his power and with this work in this out of this big book here, I have come to believe through my experience and watching others through their demonstrations that this too can materialize for me. But I must be willing to go to any lengths all the time. All the time, be awake, not asleep, dreaming I'm awake, absolutely awake to the whole process here. Having some belief or hope that will turn into belief, and then it can turn into faith. And today, my material needs are met, and my well-being had to follow my spiritual progress. They never preceded it.
David and I have been doing these studies together for 5 years, and every once in a while, especially in these later chapters, every note that I have, David clearly has too.
Oh, sorry, bro.
It's all right. And you said everything I was going to say, and you did a nice job. So I don't think I have anything to add to that.
Sorry, dude.
No, it's up. I'm sure
Well,
I
you
do
go
that
first.
sometimes. Continuing 127. Since the home has suffered more than anything else, it is well that a man exert himself there. Here's a warning. He's not likely to get far in any direction if he fails to show unselfishness and love under his own roof. We know there are difficult wives and families, but the man who is getting over alcoholism must remember he did much to make them so. Nothing to all right, I'll just jump in here first this time.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, we had this whole chapter working with others. It was entirely dedicated to step 12. And the third clause in that 12th step is practice these principles in all our affairs. And what do we talk about? I mean, there are many affairs or many aspects to life, but where do we spend a ton of our time? Right? In our primary relationships or our marriage. So we got a whole chapter to wives and our families, right? The nuclear and extended, that's the family afterward. And our jobs. Most of us are still working a lot, right? To employers. So we've got this 12th step where we're hammering working with others, because of the gift of the spiritual awakening and carrying this message to other alcoholics, and then practicing these principles in all our affairs. And we're following up with 3 chapters that are attuned to those affairs. And that's what this paragraph is really talking about. It's saying, in my spousal relationship and in my nuclear family, we have just destroyed the house, right? And so therefore, if I don't spend a big amount of focused time working in my family, working in my household to improve things, then I'm probably not going to make adequate progress. And remember, David talks about this all the time. You guys know, have been studying with us. We're all the children of God. God has no grandchildren. So there's God, he's the father, and then he's got 8 billion with a B kids on this planet. So that means when I live in a household, right, me and my wife here, or, David, when he was a younger man, and his wife and their 5 daughters, whoever constructs our household, those are all God's kids too. And what Bill is suggesting here is these children of God that I live with, I need to make sure I'm taking care of them because I'm spending more time with them than anybody else. Right? That's the message. Yeah, we know there's difficult wives and families. Of course, we're a chapter and a half of talking about how terribly spiritually sick our families are, exacerbated by our spiritual illness, but they're sick nonetheless. So yeah, they might be difficult, full of resentments and fears and harms. That's okay. That's their business. But we were a party to it. The man who's getting over alcoholism must remember he did much to make them so. We can't create spiritual sickness in other people, but we can certainly exacerbate it. We can certainly be a catalyst to accelerate and grow that sickness. Right? Some of us have had that experience on both sides of the fence. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, not much to add. Great job. But the thing that starts out is a sense the home has suffered more than anything else, more than work, more than my finances, more than anything else. And David's point is spot on. It's because that's where I spend most of my time. Unless I'm that guy earlier in the page who's gonna, be a workaholic and he's gonna put everything into that and nothing into his family. So today, my wife's common welfare, I know I put hers before mine. When I do that, that's how we have a loving, caring, thoughtful relationship. It's not about me. I take the selfishness out of that thing. And then because when I'm driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity, I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate. Again, I have to go back to the well. I'm selfish and self-centered, and over periods of time of doing this work and having a relationship with power, those things change. And I experienced it with other people here. There's no shortcut to this. It is daily work and action and more action. And every time at the end of a paragraph, at the end of the 10th step and the end of the third step, they're talking about action and more action. I don't get the rest of my laurels. The food I ate 2 weeks ago is not going to nourish me today. And the work that I did 2 weeks ago is not going to keep me spiritually fit enough today. Every day is a day I must bring the thought of God in my life. And I start on my knees every morning asking God to come in. And throughout the day, I'm in my 10th step all day long. And I continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. And then we discuss them with someone immediately. I make amends quickly. And if I harmed anyone, and then resolutely turn our thoughts to someone I can help. If I practice that 10-step discipline and I do my nightly review in the 11, my life's going to start getting better. The new guy I said I just started taking through the work, I qualified him. I got to know him. I took him through the first step on Monday night, and then I entered because he had worked the steps to some degree, just not out of this book. I introduced him to the 10-step disciplines. I introduced him to the 11-step evening review. Because those are things that are important for me that I get to do those things because I have to be able to check myself. What am I going to bring into tomorrow? I don't want to bring in all that baggage from tomorrow. I want to be right with God, so I don't want to be harming my wife. I don't want to be harming my finances. I don't want to be harming my job. And because I'm being directed from a power greater than myself in my life today, I don't have those fears. Fears are not cropping up any longer. They're not because I have fired myself from my management position.
127, bottom paragraph. As each member of a resentful family begins to see his shortcomings and admits them to the others, he lays a basis for helpful discussion. These family talks will be constructive if they can be carried on without heated argument, self-pity, self-justification, or resentful criticism. Little by little, mother and children will see they ask too much, and father will see he gives too little. Giving rather than getting will become the guiding principle. Nothing happened?
No.
Okay. Go ahead, David.
Okay, so I'm going to steal your thunder. I'm pretty sure you're going to go here. So, on page 90 of the 12 and 12 in the 10th step, it says, just the first sentence, it is a spiritual axiom that every time we're disturbed, no matter what the cause, there is something wrong with us. I need to know that. It's never God. It's never the situation. It's never her. There's something the matter with me, and as a member, and back to the text here, as a member of a resentful family begins to see their shortcomings, I don't know if they need to see their shortcomings. I don't. That's not my job to step in her yard. If she can admit to her wrongs, if there are any at all, which I find that I cause most of them anyways, because I like a Potter molded her into this person that she became. I don't think that was her personality, or her personality became defensive and argumentative and all these things because of my behaviors. I needed to have everything change in my life. And then because of that demonstration, we started having a healthier relationship. Didn't happen overnight. It's about practice and discipline. Then it says these family talks will be constructive. So that is the direction. I need to have constructive. If I cannot have a constructive discussion with my family, I shouldn't have one at all. And if I'm going to have a constructive discussion, then I need to invite God in, because I got to know when to shut up. I'm like that lawyer that wants to stand in front of the jury and just plead the case until I get get my way. And basically what happens is I'm looking at my wife's eye the whole time until her eyes roll back in her head and she falls on the floor and passes out because I worn her out. It's just like I stopped doing that. I don't do that anymore. I don't need to plead my case. Bottom of the paragraph, or some of the wording here, these family talks will be constructive. They can be carried out without these instructions: heated argument, self-pity, self-justification, resentful criticism. Those are directions for me. I don't know. I don't need to tell her this is what she needs to do. It's not even in her nature to do this anyways. I've caused these problems in my life. Little by little, mother and children will see they ask too much, and father will see he gives too little. Thinking about me is part of my problem. David brought this up a little while ago. Thinking about you is part of the solution. I got to do that more. And then it says, top of page 128, giving rather than getting. That's what I got to be about. I got to give away everything I've got to keep what I have. And then it says, and then at the end of this meeting tonight, we will read the 11th step prayer, which is St. Francis's prayer. That's what I'm striving for. I'll never get there. And I don't want to say never. That's not the proper term. I'm striving for that.
Yeah, the giving rather than getting, that's the third time this concept has been brought up in this chapter. If you remember a little earlier, and I don't have them enumerated here, guys. Sorry, I'll see if I'll put it in the WhatsApp group later. But we talked about, the history of the family. We can't keep that and be ashamed of it and hidden to ourselves. We've got to go give that history to these other new families that are coming into recovery, trying to get healthy, right? We can't hold on to that. We have to take that old stuff and kind of weaponize it for good. But what I really love is the way that this paragraph starts is each member of a resentful family. So Bill's supposition here, he's just added this adjective. Our families are all resentful. And should we really be surprised that he's doing that based on these past few paragraphs we've been reading? Because these have all been about, look, our families are so angry at how we were living, and they're even angry about our new way of life, even though we're getting better. They're angry that we're not spending enough time with them because we're going crazy in recovery. Or maybe they're angry and not spending enough time with them because we're not crazy in recovery. We're crazy trying to recover our pocketbooks, which doesn't help them either. But Bill is just summing over all these paragraphs that, look, our families are sick. And how are they primarily sick? Well, they're resentful, because all our family dynamics have gotten filled with a whole bunch of expectations from different perspectives and different people that aren't being fulfilled. Right? So then he goes on to say, these family talks are going to be constructive if that's the condition. They can be carried on without heated argument, self-pity, self-justification, and resentful criticism. These are all words and concepts we were introduced to back in the fourth step, so they should sound pretty familiar at this point. And again, we can't badger our family members to have constructive conversations. All we can do is enter into the conversations with that kind of behavior and hope that then everyone who's participating apes or models our behavior as well. Trying to decide if we squeeze in one more paragraph here, unless you got anything to double back
No,
on.
let's do it. And if we got to go back, we'll go back next week a little bit.
Okay.
Please.
Top of 128. Assume, on the other hand, that father has at the outset a stirring spiritual experience. Overnight, as it were, he is a different man. He becomes a religious enthusiast. He is unable to focus on anything else. As soon as his sobriety begins to be taken as a matter of course, the family may look at their strange new dad with apprehension, then with irritation. There's talk about spiritual matters morning, noon, and night. Remember what I said about my wife with OK Captain AA? Right? He may demand that the family find God in a hurry or exhibit amazing indifference to them and say he is above worldly considerations. He may tell mother, who has been religious all her life, that she doesn't know what it's all about and she better get his brand of spirituality while there is yet time. Abby,
Nothing,
no.
Abby.
Go ahead, David.
All right, so I'll try to be brief here to give
No,
David
no,
an
go
opportunity
ahead,
too.
man.
So I look at this. He becomes a religious enthusiast. I call that spiritual intoxication. like like David calls it the Captain AA, right?
Yeah.
And that's and I know Becky really well too, so I totally see that happening from time to time, and it's cute to me. But I think they're telling me this something if I'm reading between the lines here. 128 pages into this thing, not including the doctor's opinion, which is vital that we read that too. So 138 pages in there. They're reminding us again that love and tolerance is their code on the bottom of page 84. They're reminding us love and tolerance is our code. That you don't have to have my way of thinking, my beliefs. Nothing like that has to happen in my life. But if this is my behavior, I think that, because I'm a recent recovered alcoholic, I want to go out and save the world. That includes you. That includes my wife. That includes those kids. And it's like, that's not my job. I got to go to God and find out where I'm supposed to be. Where can I be useful? And it's just a demonstration. I don't have to like scold them or teach them with my words. It's like a demonstration. I either changed internally or I haven't. That's it. And then at the bottom of that, there says there's a talk about spiritual matters morning, noon, and night. I don't know that I do that, but I get very enthusiastic and I get very literal about what I hear in meetings. And I won't call somebody out in a meeting, but I will certainly take you aside. And I know David did this the other day, very gentlemanly like, and just ask them if they would be interested to hear what the big book had to say. About a matter that they someone brought up in a meeting, and we've all done it. I believe. I don't want to speak for anyone else. I heard some in the meeting early in sobriety. And I thought it was cute. I stored it in my brain. And I waited for the right opportunity to bring it up in a meeting, and I spotted it out. And it was wrong information. It had nothing to do with the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous at all. Or actually, what it was is I took it out of I put it in improper context, because that's what I heard. So I make mistakes too, and I'm a human being, and I need to practice love and tolerance. And the last thing on there is the last paragraph on there, last part of the paragraph. He says he may tell mother who has been religious all her life that she doesn't know what it's all about. My wife's Catholic and she went to Catholic school and religious school and all this other stuff. She gets to believe what she wants to believe. Now, what I found out today is that she didn't learn a lot about the Bible, and I'm in with some people, a pastor and a good friend of mine, learning about the Old Testament. I'm a non-practicing Jew who wants to become practicing, so I'm interested in finding out more about my religious and my background. So, what better way to do that when someone has some armed with the facts about the other book, and I'm open and willing to that matter. And I know that God was a big part of that. And if Karen wants to be a part of it, she can be a part of it. I don't make her come be a part of it. She does it on her terms. And she does do it. She does participate when she feels like she has the time to do it. So it's just drawing us closer together. God is a part of our home, and I wouldn't have it any other way, and I don't think she would either.
I'm just going to wrap it up here. We'll hit this paragraph again to start next week, and I'll
Okay.
share my thoughts in next week's.
Okay, wonderful.